Dreams are a fascinating and mysterious phenomenon that have captured the human imagination for centuries. They are a series of images, emotions, and sensations that occur during sleep and can range from the mundane to the surreal. Some of my strongest memories are of dreams from my childhood, involving images of black and white kaiju, ghosts popping through walls, or cow-skulled phantoms chasing me through large corridors. While those images certainly gave me a few nightmares at the time, today they come from some of my most favorite films and stories that I love to revisit. The representation of horror in children's media has been a topic of debate for a long time. Some people argue that exposing children to horror can be harmful, traumatic, while others believe that it can be a valuable and even enjoyable experience for them. Exposing a child to darker themes and narratives, rather than shielding them, can provide a valuable tool to understanding how to cope with traumatic experiences and face difficult situations with confidence. Horror is represented throughout children's media, such as books and films, or going all the way back to early versions of nursery rhymes and ghost stories told around a campfire. Many of the darker elements of fairy tales and nursery rhymes deal with mature themes such as violence, cruelty, and death. Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass are two of the most celebrated works of children's literature. Although they are generally viewed as whimsical stories filled with fantastical creatures and absurd situations, they can also be viewed as examples of children's horror. Alice encounters many strange and often frightening creatures throughout her adventures, such as the Cheshire Cat with its eerie grin, the Jabberwocky with its razor-sharp claws, and the Red Queen with her sadistic tendencies. Alice frequently notes how unsettling she finds these encounters. The sense of unease that comes with encountering these creatures is a hallmark of horror, and it can be particularly potent for children who are not yet desensitized to such images. While most direct adaptations of the Alice books tend to tone down the grotesque imagery in order to be a more family-friendly experience, the 1988 film Alice, directed by Jan Švankmajer, immerses itself in unsettling surrealism. In a 2011 interview, Švankmajer explained why his vision took this tone, saying, "So far, all adaptations of Alice presented as a fairy tale, but Carroll wrote it as a dream. And between a dream and a fairy tale, there is fundamental difference. Where fairy tales tend to be rooted in some sort of moral or educational lesson, for Švankmajer, dreams are simply an expression of the unconscious, which uncompromisingly pursues the realization of our most secret wishes, without considering rationale or moral inhibitions." Švankmajer says that my Alice is realized as a dream. The film opens much the same as the book, with a bored Alice sitting with her sister on a riverbank. It quickly diverges from there as we zoom in on a clearly annoyed Alice after having had her hand swatted from paging through her sister's book. We then get a close-up of Alice's mouth as she speaks directly to the audience, breaking the fourth wall. Now you will see a film made for children. Perhaps. It quickly becomes a very poignant perhaps, as Alice and the audience witness a taxidermied rabbit pry itself from the board it has been nailed to, ripping itself open to bleed sawdust. Alice is soon plunged into a bizarre and unsettling world that blurs the line between reality and imagination. The film is filled with surreal and disturbing imagery, which reflects the disjointed and fragmented nature of dreams. But this is not a place of safety and wonder. This is a wonderland where a jar of marmalade may also be filled with rusty thumbtacks. Alice is actively attacked by taxidermied animals and chased by chimeric skeletons. Instead of a forest path or flower gardens, Alice moves from room to room of a sparsely furnished and dilapidated house. One moment she may be in a pantry with shelves full of living specimens and knickknacks preserved in fluid, and the next in a room filled with sentient socks that bore through the wooden floor like mealworms through an apple. Where Carroll's original writing makes a clear note to the inefficacy of the Queen's orders of off with their heads, in Schwenkmeyer's version, the White Rabbit quickly carries out this command. He quickly cuts the heads of several characters, including the Marionette Hatter and the Wind-Up March Hare. The elements of horror aren't just portrayed in the stop-motion creatures of Wonderland. Alice herself is portrayed as a horrific child, as defined by Catherine Lester in her book Horror Films for Children. In place of the curious but polite Victorian-era girl from Carroll's books, Schwenkmeyer's Alice has a penchant for throwing rocks rather than making daisy chains. She can be much more destructive than other versions of Alice, and even takes part in cathartic revenge from time to time. The film ends with this Alice musing about cutting the White Rabbit's head off herself.
Zase se opozdil. Asi mu srazím hlavu. Pomyslela si Alenka.
With its mix of stop-motion animation and live-action shots blended together, the dark surrealist imagery makes this film, as Schwenkmeyer says, a realized dream. Because hey, nightmares are dreams too.